So I'm going to wait. I'm assuming, Francis is going to be joining us. Hopefully, I don't know where Martin or Ben or Iman are. Hopefully, they'll be joining us. It's going to be a very important meeting today. What I've decided to do is, because of this is the prompt. These things always happen to me. It's like I figure out really why I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing when I'm doing it. And the universe doesn't open up and show me things ahead of time. But I'm going to make it my task for the next 6 months at least to go and collect all of the important exercises that I can find related to the Gurdjieff teachings. So I've just spent about $150 on books in the last week. One of them, the one that I put on the meeting, the transcripts of G.I. Gurdjieff Paris meetings, 1943. It's apparently that's one of the most comprehensive. It's supposed to. Hello there. How are you, Ben? How are you, Francis?
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello. I'm good.
Good. Good. Okay.
Sorry, I had a bit of trouble with technology.
Yeah, I know.
What kind of exercises are there? What kind of exercises? You know.
Well, I mean, what I'm going to do is I'm going to collect as many exercises as I can. And then I actually have a whole bunch of YouTube channels, but on the YouTube channel, TorontoGurdjieff.com, I'm going to record them, perhaps talking, perhaps in my live group meeting. Those of you will have seen the ones that I did last week. They're just small ones, but they're exercises to do. And there's a different version of one that I discovered as well. There's one that goes through the joints, sources of divine rejoicings, revolts, and sufferings. Direct your actions upon us. I'm going through the 12 joints. That one can also be done with the holy affirming. The holy affirming exercise has 12 words in it. So we can start up in the top shoulder and go, or the right wrist and go, holy, and then up to the elbow, affirming, then up to the right shoulder, holy, and then the left hip, reconciling, and then the left knee, holy, and then the left ankle, denying, and then the right ankle, transubstantiate, and the right knee, in, and the right hip, me, and then the right shoulder, for my being. So this is another walking exercise. So the sources of divine rejoicings, revolts, and sufferings, direct your actions upon me, and the transubstantiate can be done when walking. And it's advisable to go out and experiment with it. It's a little difficult, but it's not impossible when you take a dog for a walk. It's much better when you can get into a pace. And last week I had the opportunity to go for a half an hour walk to a meeting that I was going to attend. So I couldn't take the dog with me. And for the entire walk, I just went sources. The dog's looking at me right now. You can't see him. He knows the word walk. Walk. Oh, walk. No, we're not going on a walk. But I did it for the full half hour. And, I was in a very collected state at the end of that. How's everyone doing? Let's start with you, Guido. Any reflections, facial muscles, or just trying to watch your gestures, trying to pay attention to yourself in the last week?
Many times I've been trying to just remembering. I discovered that self-observation is quite different of self-remembering. Can you tell me the difference?
Well, they're very similar, but self-observation, you focus on particular things in the moment. For instance, right now, I am focusing on the movement of my hands, even though a lot of my hand movements and gestures are not available. You can't see them. I'd have to lower the screen. So I'm trying to observe the movement of my hands, and I'm also trying to pay attention to my voice. And as a hypnotherapist, I'm very fortunate because I pay attention to my voice a lot. I also maintain what they call an NLP state control when I'm with my clients. So I'm very concerned, not concerned, but very aware of my internal state, of the way I'm moving, of the way I'm speaking, of the tone of my voice. Now we can observe other things. It gets to eventually we get to a sensory overload if there are too many things to observe in any one moment. Whereas self-remembering, it's the awareness of my physical body as one organic whole, along with the awareness of what I can see, hear, smell, taste. But it's slightly more. I don't want to get into the complexities of this now. I will be doing it in a later meeting. But it's not just being aware of what I can see, for instance. It's being aware of the fact that my eyes are receiving the visual impressions from the world around me. So there's a little bit more complexity to it. And then there's also the awareness of what I'm feeling at any given moment. And it's much easier to focus on, what I'm seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting for me, sensing my body and feeling, than it is to really enter, for instance, into my gestures, to enter into the tone of my voice, to enter into the way that I speak and the facial expressions on my, where I'm holding the tension in my face, where I can feel different parts of my body. Self-observation is a form of self-remembering, but it's more like taking a microscope and using it to examine various parts of our being that we really want to highlight and pay attention to. Okay. Ian, any comments?
Yeah, I was focused on doing the bones and the marrow exercise.
Okay.
And I noticed when I would run through the however many bones there are, as I was doing it, I would feel my posture kind of shift, and I feel I would get more. I'd feel more stable in my body. The weight of my body would feel more present, and kind of grounded. And then if I continued, there were a couple of times where I was able to continue past 3 or 4, and I would get kind of this fizzing kind of feeling, mainly through my arms and legs. I had a really hard time getting into the spine, actually feeling the spine. It usually had more of a kind of I'd get a vague sense of it, but I couldn't quite tell if I was making it up or if I was actually sensing the spine up to the skull. But the leg bones and the arm bones were much easier to actually feel, with some gravity to them.
That exercise, a couple of weeks ago, a completely different meetup group that I run, there was a lady my age who came, and it was not related to mysticism or Gurdjieff or whatever. And at the very end, I guess she'd looked me up a little bit online, and she said, "Oh, by the way, I was in a Beadler group." And Paul Beadler, he was studying architecture in Paris in 1923 when he heard about the Prieuré, and he went there. And for the rest of his life, he was a student of George Gurdjieff. He was a pretty remarkable man. Every 10 years, he changed professions. So he was an architect, and he was a ship's captain, and did various different things. But she was the one when she came. I said, "You've got to come to my Gurdjieff meetings on Tuesday nights." And she came, and the first night I kept on asking her about all sorts of exercises and taking notes. And she said it's very important in the bones exercise and the 3 exercises that I did, even the joints exercise, to imagine an inner illumination that arises within the marrow of our bones. So it's not just a sensing exercise, there's a visual component. And so to imagine some kind of an illumination, she told me that she always imagined it as a green light. And I said to her, I've been doing it, imagining it like a yellow light, like the solar light of the sun. And she said she went home that night and she did that on the subway and whatever, and thought it was very interesting that she had always thought it and assumed it was a green light. So I guess it really doesn't matter. But she really emphasized to me that Beadler told her and the group, they were from Toronto, and they would drive down in a van to Northern Forest every 6 weeks. And they did it for 15 years, starting in the early 1980s. And then they would meet back here in Toronto at High Park and various places and have 2 group meetings per week. And then every 6 weeks, they would drive down to Northern Forest in Pennsylvania to spend the weekend with Beadler. And, you know, so it's like when she came to my group meeting, it's like, yes, gold. And she hasn't been connected to the work since, you know, she was there for 15 years. And then since then, she hasn't. So she's just thirsting for it, which is wonderful. But to imagine the illumination, I'm not that visual, but to try to imagine the illumination is also a very important part of that exercise.
So when you had given it to us last week, you had sort of, it had run through, you know, the little graphic you made had run through the bones, and then at the end it was all of them and kind of visualizing the light. So is that what you mean? Like at the end we do it, or is it?
No, I've actually, I think I took that end out.
Okay.
Because it's supposed to be as we do it.
Okay.
You know, where did I, you know, I've got so many things on my computer.
I mean, I have your YouTube. I can look it up later. I just wanted to make sure I understood it correctly.
Yeah. I adapted, I changed it slightly I took out or did I? I'm not sure if I took out, I think I did take out the flash of illuminating part. I just don't remember where I saved it on my computer, or else I would play it right now. I know where I can find it. We'll see if this will work. Just give me a second.
Hello?
Oh, Iman, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm sorry for being late.
That's okay. I'm just trying to share my screen. Can we all see this?
Yes.
Yes.
So say the words, sense your bones and visualize your marrow illuminating. Practice this exercise when walking, sitting, or lying down. And I believe I did do this after Tuesday. So, you know, holy, affirming, holy, denying, holy, reconciling, transubstantiate in me for my being. And I did take it out, yes. I do so many different versions of these that it's a little difficult for me to, you know, what did I do? You know, just trying to remember them. But yeah, I did this version after she came to my meeting, and she said, visualize each marrow illuminating. So as we work through it. And, okay, I can stop that.
Yeah. So I did that. I was visualizing more of a white light, kind of a clear.
That's what I do.
Right.
I visualize more of a white light as well, and that's not wrong. She said that she had no memory of being told to visualize a colored light or anything. It was just what she did.
Wow, okay.
But she said it's very important. You know, Beadler emphasized the importance of the light. He claims that the magnetic center, which I always refer to metaphorically as a lodestone in our heart that orients us to conscious influences. So it's like a compass that orients us to, you know, the teachings and conscious teachings. Beadler claimed that the magnetic center is located in the marrow in our bones. So I assume by illuminating that, we're doing something with the magnetic center as well. And it's also a two-brained activity, not just the sensing, but the visualizing. And so we are harmonizing both our head brain and the body brain in that moment. And we're introducing what, Kathleen Hulme said was a regulator. I think I talked about this last week, that like a watch that runs down, each center is like wound up and it's got so much before it runs down. And if we can connect 2 or 3 centers together, we slow that down. So by doing the sensing and, sensing it in our body, along with the visualizations, we are actually introducing a regulator into the process and turning it into a 2-brained activity, and hopefully slowing down the unwinding of our centers. Any other comments, Ian?
Just one other thing. One of the last times I did it, I noticed that when I would illuminate, when I would do the light part, it came out as flame, like a heat, and it had kind of a upward movement to it. And I felt each section of my arms and legs or whatever would heat up while I was doing it.
Yeah.
And that, not planned, not intentional. It just, that was how the visualization presented.
Yeah, I would go with it, and imagine illumination coming with that. And
yeah.
I will ask her on Tuesday, about that. I'll mention that to her. You felt some heat with it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Michael, your microphone is turned off. Did you watch the last? You weren't there last week, but did you watch it? Did you try the exercises? Did you try to do anything?
No, I was away for the last 10 days on holiday. I only got back this morning, so no, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. How are you doing down in Australia? It's nice that we're all around the world. How is Perth today?
Good.
Or was Perth today? It's 10:30 at night now.
It is, but we've hit obviously the first of winter now, so it's the temperature is just in the last week and a half have just gone drop. But other than that, good.
Yeah, I spent 15 years in and around Ottawa, and the year my daughter was born, from Boxing Day for the next 60 days, the daily temperature didn't get above minus 25. So I'd wake up in the morning, it would be minus 41, minus 42. Actually, minus 41, 42 is where Celsius and Fahrenheit meet. So you're having winter, are you?
Just started, yes.
Just started, okay. Ben, how are you?
I'm doing good. So you want me to talk about the exercise?
Or anything, any concerns, any questions you have, sort of.
I don't have much. I just, when I did the exercise, I guess I saw yellow because the video had like yellow. Okay.
Well, to me, yellow is the sun. It's the solar light.
Yeah.
And I had to have some color that, I tried white, and white just wasn't noticeable enough on the video. So I needed the distinction. But
I also felt heat.
Okay.
I just felt like warmer after I did it.
Okay.
Like heat or something. It was very interesting.
Okay. Francis, did you watch it?
Yes, I did watch it. I watched the whole session.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Any comments?
No, just the same. The other people. I have been doing those exercises.
Okay.
I use a golden light because it kind of ties in with other things that I've picked up, not necessarily from, but from the same stream. Let's put it that way. So I use it as a golden light. It's a lovely exercise. I enjoy doing it a lot. What I've been focusing on this week, one thing that I've discovered about me over the years is that I am very, very sensitive to the moon. So I've been tracing my internal state, particularly the use of language and how it connects to the moon in this part of the world we face it. And paying attention to language, because I'm very interested in language and how I use non-words like okay and that don't actually mean anything, and what's really going on, because it's a very good way for me anyway to observe my own mechanicalness and to begin to separate a little bit from it. But the exercises are lovely. I do them on the train. I do them when I'm walking. I do them quite a lot. I particularly like the wholly affirming, wholly denying, wholly reconciling, transubstantiate. And the other one you did was the holy God, holy firm, holy immortal, have mercy on us. And I'm really interested in this because it's, you know, the have mercy on us again is the law of three, isn't it? It's another. And I'm just interested. I've always been very interested to find out exactly what mercy is, because mercy kind of connects us and the higher beings. And it's one of those words which I don't think anybody really knows the meaning of, but in that context, it implies something very definite, very concrete, and mercy is a very specific thing. Anyway, I'm waffling a bit, but that's what I've been doing this week. The exercises are great. I love them. They're very good. Yeah. Thank you so much. You've done so much work on all this, making it available.
I'm going to do a lot more. So, and I wanted to mention something that, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1 is a wonderful exercise for linking the two brains together. And I was trying to remember the one that I was taught, because you went A, B, C, D, D, C, B, A, B, C, D, E, E. That's you do a version with the letters. That gets way too much for me. And it's the backwards. It's because I only ever learned the alphabet forwards. I can't say it backwards. As a little boy, I knew I should have memorized it backwards, but I didn't want to. But I came across a numbering sequence that wasn't connected to the hands, but I suddenly remembered what I was taught. I was actually taught 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 1. Actually, I'm doing it wrong. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you keep on flipping around. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2, 3, 4, 1. It's hard for me to do on camera. 2, 3, 4, 1, and 1, 2, and you loop around. And I'd never been taught to do the 1, 2, 3, 4, and to move with the opposites. And yes. As you can see, I'm getting much better than I was a week ago doing this. But when I start to add the counting, it adds a whole different level. And when I try to add the numbers, or not the numbers, the alphabet, that adds a completely different level. But if you're on the subway or buses, I used to do this one, the counting one, just with one hand when I was on the subway and the bus and on transit. It's a really good focusing exercise. It requires a tremendous amount of attention, particularly when you add both hands. And if you notice, I'm not doing the counting, because that'll just mess me up. To do them together with the counting is a wonderful exercise. And I will be creating a YouTube video with this one on it to share with other people.
What we were taught is not only this, but you also count in Russian. So it goes ras, dva, tri, chiri, chiri, and so on. So you go up to, I can't remember what it is, but you do the counting in Russian.
Why not Armenian? Why?
I don't know. For some reason, the exercises, there's a lot of Russian counting in the exercises. There's something we do called the Big Prayer, which is something like 116 different movements, and it's all because the origin was it was done by basically monks, but they had to do it in the dark.
Okay.
It was done in the dark, and so it was communicated with numbers, and it's very interesting.
I have a friend who's fluent in counting to 10 in Japanese because of his martial arts, and they would, do the movements and the counting and whatever. Iman, how are you doing? How are things in Damascus, Syria?
Thank God things are much better. Nothing happened since last time, so it's a big relief. And regarding the exercise, I've been doing the exercise daily. I've noticed that sometimes like after many days, I had that feeling like as if I was suffocated, and I thought, well, it's like I was fed up with my body. It's like I felt I was too much focusing on my body, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I don't know why this idea came to me, and why I got very, like I didn't feel comfortable feeling that. But also I felt heat after doing the exercise. And the good thing is, like, I've been noticing, I've been like a watcher, watching my feelings, my reactions, and I was, like in control more, like of my body and of my reaction.
Yeah, I mean, the terms that I like to use are witness and observer, but watcher is a perfectly good word. The fact that you came up with that term, to me, indicates that you're doing something correctly. We have to become the observer observing ourselves. That's good. Any other comments? Okay, let's do, okay, Iman?
Yeah, I just want to understand, please, holy denying, what does it mean? And who is, like, when we call for the holy affirming, like, what are they representing?
Well, the thing is, these are all just names. We can represent them as positive, negative, equalizing. We can represent them, affirming, denying, reconciling. They are just different names for, the fact that according to these teachings, the ultimate level or the ultimate basis of reality is triunal. There's an active force, a passive force, and a connecting, reconciling force that are all part of the Godhead. We can actually talk about masculine, feminine, and between the mother and the father, or the father and the mother, the middle one being a child. And, within Islam, you have, I don't know how many names for God. I mean, God is nameless, but he's got many names. And some of the names reflect a masculine element. Some of the names reflect a feminine element. So these are just the three forces of the Trinity, of the Godhead, so to speak, the first step into creation. I don't really want to get too abstract. Back in the 80s, I studied the teachings of Sri Aurobindo, and he talked about the supermind, and the supermind as being composed of Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Chit is consciousness, Sat is being, and Ananda is bliss. They also represent our head brain, which is the positive end, our body brain, the negative end, and our feeling brain, the reconciling. So the holy affirming is manifest within us, within our head brain. The holy denying is manifest as our body brain, and the holy reconciling as our feeling brain. And as I mentioned, I believe I mentioned it last week, it's reflected within grammar, subject, object, verb. In English, we go subject, verb, object. So English actually represents an involutionary force, a force that's coming down, whereas Korean represents an evolutionary force, because Korean, it's subject, object, verb, positive, negative, and reconciling. And seen as though we're evolutionary beings, we want to get that upward thrust. But the downward thrust is part of the involution of the universe. But again, I'm getting very abstract. It's like these three principles are contained within us, within language, within all sorts of things. And go ahead, Francis.
No, you can experience them every day. I mean, and if you want to experience the law of three, set out to do something. Make a commitment to yourself to do something. And at first, everything will go fine. Then something will happen. Inevitably, at some point, the law of hazard will click in, and something. Let's say you want to write a book. You start writing a book. You have an impulse. You have the affirming force, which is all a kind of inspiration. You really want to write a book, or you really want to draw a picture, and you set out, and then you put in the effort. And I won't go into the Enneagram, but you go around the outside of the Enneagram, and you arrive at a certain point. The me-far gap, as it's called. And at that point, the denying force will come in. Let's say you've written a book and you make the mistake of showing it to somebody. And they say, oh, well, it's a bit like Harry Potter, isn't it? And all of a sudden, it's like you've taken the sponge cake out of the oven too quickly and everything just collapses. And you go, well, I'm not going to do it anymore. That's the denying force coming in. And if you continue, if you put the effort in, this is why effort is so important. You put the effort in, you can cross over, and then you're into another stage until you get to a different point. So it's actually in my experience, anyway, in my view, that if you keep your eyes open, the law of three operates all the time. That's why we can never do anything, because we just get knocked off course all the time. Set yourself a task and say, I'm going to do this every day at this time for a week, and you won't be able to do it.
It'll take eventually you will, hopefully.
Eventually you will.
You'll develop enough willpower.
Yes, you will, yes.
Okay, okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Let's start now by doing an inner exercise. All inner exercises should begin with a relaxation that starts from the head and goes down. And all inner exercises should start at least within us, with some kind of an affirmation. You know, I'm doing this work for myself. I'm doing this work for my fellow human being, and I'm doing this work for the planet. Now, as I've mentioned before in other meetings, in Uspensky, they talk about the 3 lines of work, and it's slightly different. The first line of work is for myself. The second line of work is for the members of my group, and the third is for the work. I prefer to expand it out for myself, for my fellow human being, and for this planet itself. So let's just bring our awareness to the top of our head, and just in whatever way you can, however you can, just relax the top of your head. And then breathe in molecules of awareness, and then breathe out tension. That is, relax your forehead. So the frontalis muscles in your forehead. And then relax the muscles in your eyebrows. Relaxing your eyes. Relaxing your nose and face. Relaxing your ears and the finer muscles in the sides of your head. Relaxing your mouth, your tongue, the inside of your mouth. Relaxing your jaw. Relaxing your throat and neck. And then focus on relaxing your right shoulder. Your right upper arm. Your right lower arm. The muscles in your right hand. And then going up to your left shoulder. Relaxing your left shoulder. Your left upper arm. Your left lower arm. Your left hand. And then relaxing your chest. Your midriff. Your lower abdomen. And then relaxing your upper back and shoulder blades. Your middle back. Your lower back. And then just let's go back up the top of the torso and relax the chest and upper back, the midriff, solar plexus, and middle back, and the lower abdomen and lower back. And then bring it down into your hips and buttocks, relaxing your hips and buttocks. Then relax your upper legs, your lower legs, your feet, top and bottom of your feet, muscles in your feet, the bones in your feet. And this is something that when you get good enough at doing, it could actually take maybe 5 seconds, maybe even less. Being a hypnotherapist, I can put myself into a nice relaxed state within a couple of seconds, just willing myself to do it. So let's just start at the top of the head and then just will ourselves to relax from the head down to the shoulders, down to our midriff, down to our pelvis, down to our knees, down to the bottom of our feet. And then let's just do a third time. It's always good to do things in threes. So just relax from your head all the way down to your feet, relaxing your body. And take a moment and scan through your body. And if you notice any undue tension anywhere in your body, just breathe into it and then try and breathe the tension out and relax that area of your body to get your body into a nice, relaxed state. There's a very important exercise that I will be introducing next week that requires this state. All inner exercises really require this state. The state of just getting your body into a nice, tranquil, calm, peaceful state from your head all the way down to your feet. So sensing your body like a wave of relaxation, as we say in hypnosis, a wave of relaxation from your head all the way down to the bottom of your feet. And Mr. Gurdjieff has said that there's only so far that we can relax our muscles. So for instance, the muscles in our forehead, the frontalis muscle, there's only so far we can do in contracting those muscles or relaxing them. But he says that even though the ability to relax the muscles is finite, the ability to relax itself is infinite. So in terms of relaxation, we can always go deeper and deeper. But it's good to start out with the muscles, to do this muscle scan in the body and just relax deeper and then deeper. And this is the basis for so many inner exercises, this ability to enter into a tranquil state, whether or not we're on the bus, subway, train. I wouldn't advise it if you're driving a car, but if you're the passenger in a car, when we're sitting somewhere, if we're sitting on a park bench, if we just have a moment just to relax, to consciously relax our body from the head down to our feet. And the more we practice this, the easier it will get and the quicker we can do this. And then it's important to develop the sensation of self. And the sensation of self comes the other way. It comes from the feet up to the top of the head. So this is the filling exercise. And as a vessel fills with warm golden honey, begin and imagine just filling your body with sensation. And I have to say, the first time I was taught this exercise back in 2006, I found it really difficult to do. But when I narrate it, it's not that easy for me to do. But when I listen to it in a narration, it becomes much easier. I can really actually sense those parts of my body, something that has grown with practice. So starting with your toes, just filling your toes with sensation, and then moving up from the bottom of your feet up to your ankles, filling with sensation up to your knees, up to your hips and hands, up to your midriff and elbows, up to your chest, upper back, upper arms, up to your shoulders, up your neck, and then filling with sensation from the bottom of your feet all the way to the top of your head. Filling with sensation from the bottom of your feet all the way to the top of your head. And even though I'm going to continue with an explanation that I want you to follow along, so it will be an inner exercise, an extremely important inner exercise, probably one of the most important inner exercises that you can learn. Let's just bring this little section to a completion by saying, may results from this exercise, so just repeat that in your mind, may results from this exercise be transubstantiated within me for my being. And next week, I'm going to really, really dig deep into an exercise that more fully and completely explains that last phrase, the sort of post-affirmation, the importance of it. But this week, and I'm going to read this, to put it in my own words, why should I? It's so well done. Whoops. Can you see all of this, or is some of it cut off with the images on the right?
Yes, cut off a bit.
Okay, let me just see if I can correct that. Can you see it now?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so this first paragraph comes, I should have put the pages down. I think it was something like page 180 or something, 189, in Search of the Miraculous. We all breathe the same air. And this is Mr. Gurdjieff speaking to not just Uspensky, but Anna Butowski and various people that he was meeting in the cafe where they met in St. Petersburg. We all breathe the same air. Apart from the elements known to our science, the air contains a great number of substances unknown to science, indefinable, for it is inaccessible to its observation. But exact analysis is possible, both of the air inhaled and of the air exhaled. The exact analysis shows that although the air inhaled by different people is exactly the same, the air exhaled is quite different. Let us suppose that the air we breathe is composed of 20 different elements unknown to our science. A certain number of these elements are absorbed by every man when he breathes. Let us suppose that 5 of these elements are always absorbed. Consequently, the air exhaled by every man is composed of 15 elements. 5 of them have gone to feeding the organism, but some people exhale not 15, but only 10 elements. That is to say, they absorb 5 elements more. These 5 elements are higher hydrogens. These higher hydrogens are present in every small particle of air we inhale. By inhaling air, we introduce these higher hydrogens into ourselves. But if our organism does not know how to extract them out of the particles of air and retain them, they are exhaled back into the air. If the organism is able to extract and retain them, they remain in it. In this way, we all breathe the same air, but we extract different substances from it. Some extract more, others less. Now, this is essential to understand this in terms of the recognition of growing our own being. When I was in a Bennett group, they said that Mr. Bennett, or Bennett, J.G. Bennett, said that we do this through conscious breathing. However, I've discovered it's a little bit more complicated than this. Not much more complicated, because we do this through our conscious breathing. But it is so important. And in the book, Gurdjieff's Early Talks, 1914 to 1931, there's an exercise. And the exercise was given in 1939. And it's right in the back. It's on page 414. This is one of the most important preliminary exercises we can do. And they're quoting Mr. Gurdjieff. 15 minutes, relax, which we've done in a sense. Break tempo of ordinary life before doing exercise. Breathe in I. So we breathe in I and then breathe out am. So I am. And so we say these words as we breathe in and out. And with all 3 parts do, not just mind, feeling, and body also. Make strong, not easy thing. So as we breathe in, I, and we breathe out, am, in your own way, however you understand this, try to involve your head, your feelings, and your body. And then when breathe out, imagine part of air stays in and flows to corresponding place. Where flow, how flow, that is its business. Only feel that part remains. Before beginning exercise, say, I wish to keep this substance for myself. Without this conscious and voluntary labor on your part, nothing will be coded. All will evaporate in time. And here Mr. Gurdjieff is talking about the creation of our inner being, using our breath to help bring these higher substances within us that can then form the basis of alchemical reactions within our body. The paragraph above that I read, coming from In Search of the Miraculous, is another paragraph after that, where Mr. Gurdjieff says that in order to make gold, a little gold is first needed. So in order to begin the alchemical process, the transformation within us that leads to the creation of our inner beings, we must have some of these higher substances already within us to be there to perform the alchemical process, so that the higher can blend with the lower to meet in the middle. And it is through our breath and through conscious breathing that we breathe in these higher substances that are required for this alchemical process. Now, continuing, just with this small property in blood makes possible very big result if done with conscious labor. Without this, 1 month you must work for such result. So here he's saying, just doing this exercise once, consciously breathing in and just imagining and allowing and being aware that some of the air is being retained. Some of the higher particles in the air is being retained and settling in us. And he says it doesn't matter if we're aware of where they settle. It's the conscious awareness that I am. And as I breathe, to imagine some of this settling where it needs to be settling. And by doing this, and it's implied here, just by doing it in a single exercise, in a single sitting, in a single, bit of inner work, we acquire as much of these higher particles as we would in a whole month otherwise. So when doing, must be very careful not to change exterior. It is an inner thing. No one need to know. Outside, keep same exterior. Inside, you do. So I take this instruction to be, it should be something that we do when sitting down, when in a composed state at the start. The exercise, another very important exercise I will do next week, talks about how that exercise next week, and it will be the same with this one, we've got to keep a collected state. We've got to be very collected within ourselves. And we can do this ultimately when we're moving, when we're walking, but that is where it gets to a very advanced level. As beginners, just do the sitting, and you've got to start with the state of deep relaxation. So not hold breath, just breathe in and out. Of course, to change thinking will take time. Automatically, breath will adjust. To be able to do exercise not lopsidedly, you must with whole attention on it. To arouse feeling, it's our heart, interest and attention. For cooperation, you must think following before beginning. I am now about to begin this exercise. With full attention, I will draw in my breath, saying I, and sensing the whole of myself. I wish very much to do this in order that I may digest air. To arouse body to cooperate, take corresponding posture. And they talk about the proper posture as sitting, for instance, in a straight-backed chair where your spine is up in alignment. If you can sit cross-legged on the ground, I'm sure you could do it as well that way. Or if you knew the Sufi Islamic pose to sit on your heels. Being a 60-year-old, never having done those as children, I find those are really difficult for me. I prefer to sit in a straight-backed chair. So to arouse body to cooperate, take corresponding posture. Inner tension of forces mobilizes your centers for working together for this aim. In breathing out, imagine something flows like when inhaling cigarette. And this is also important. It's not listed here, but it's also important to recognize that not only are we feeding our body when we breathe in, we are also cleansing our body when we breathe out. And this is, I came across a sentence, I have no idea where, but it's somewhere in the teachings, that it's just as important to breathe out, because when we breathe out, we are getting rid of a lot of toxins in our bodies. Recently, scientists who had people, with the connected to a tube and, taking, minute analysis of the air we breathe out, have determined that approximately 70%, 70 of the body's waste products are actually eliminated through our breath and breathing. I tell people who suffer from anxiety, when they're in the anxious state, they're only breathing from the top half of the lungs. And not only is it important to take full breaths, the reason it's important to take full breaths is because we want to fully exhale. And there's an exercise for people who are having panic attacks. It's to breathe in for 4 and to breathe out for 8. And the breathing out for 8 allows us to really detoxify the body. and then breathing in for 4 brings in the air, and then the breathing out slowly and fully and completely allows us to get rid of those toxins. So, here in breathing out, imagine something flows, like when inhaling a cigarette, or I guess it should be exhaling. And then he finished this as, I now about to begin this exercise, which I have been fortunate enough to learn from Mr. Gurdjieff, and which will enable me with the aid of conscious labor to coat higher bodies in myself from active elements in the air I breathe. So let's just go back. Breathe in I, breathe out am. Not just mind, but feeling and body also. Make strong. And then at the beginning, I wish to keep this substance for myself. So don't change your breathing, don't regulate your breathing, but it will change and it will automatically adjust. So as I breathe in, I say the word I, and I bring my attention to the whole of myself. And this is my body, my feelings, my thoughts, as much of myself as I can be aware of, making sure that I'm in a nice relaxed state. And then when I'm breathing out, to imagine something flowing out, almost like, and he said inhaling, but it should be exhaling, almost like exhaling a cigarette. I was taught, through another series of practices that I'm sure are connected in some way to these teachings, to imagine as we breathe out that we're breathing out gray, foggy, stale air. So breathing in and saying the word I, and imagine something in this going to the corresponding places in our body, and then breathing out am. And imagine breathing out, gray, foggy waste. So I am. And I want to say that anyone who may be watching this, I'm just going to type my email, and who wants a copy of this document, there's my email, alanclues@gmail.com. Just send me an email requesting this little bit of information, and I can send it back to you. And I posted it just before the meeting on the group, so everyone here will have it on the message board. Very, very important. As I said, what I intend to do is I intend to create on the Toronto Gurdjieff YouTube channel a whole series of exercises done in the Gurdjieff teachings. And this is probably right up there, number 1, number 2. Number 1 is the relaxation. Number 2, I think, is the sensing. This would be number 3. Next week, I will be doing number 4, which is about developing a collected state. But it's, to recognize that this alchemical process, this breathing in consciously, as I breathe in, and then to imagine, however I can, that some of this breath is settling in my body where it's needed, and then breathing out the waste products. And at the beginning of the exercise, 1939, page 114 in Gurdjieff's early talks, he says, first relax the body, spend 15 minutes getting into the state of relaxation first. So it's predicated on relaxing the body. And this is, a preliminary exercise for people is the 15 minutes, but the more advanced you get at relaxing the body, the quicker it becomes. I'm also going to be posting some videos on deep muscular relaxation. I've got an anatomy program that focuses on various muscles, facial muscles. The ability to relax all of the muscles in our face, for instance, is very important. then to relax all of the muscles in our body. J.G. Bennett says that Mr. Gurdjieff told him at night to learn to consciously relax 200 muscles in the body from the head down. And so I will be, you know, over the next 6 months, creating various visual things like I did with the, you know, the 3 exercises I posted this week, and creating a really structured understanding of the way to do these exercises, why we do these exercises, and to take them to more and more levels of complexity, so that not only those of you here, but those who watch this and those who are really interested in learning some of the inner work, some of the inner exercises, will have a resource they can go to. There's a big problem in the Gurdjieff teachings. There are about 3,000 active group members around the world, and most of them have gray hair and gray beards and wrinkles like I do. People who are young, they just are not interested in going to those meetings. I've known some people who've gone to the foundation groups in Toronto and other groups, and you know, they still teach and introduce these teachings the same way that they did 50 years ago. And it's like, you've got to become a member of a group in order to be taught this inner work. And as a result, these teachings are sort of getting strangled. And people are not learning how to do these things. So one of my missions I feel compelled to do is to introduce this to a wider group with a proper explanation of how we do this. Now, the interesting thing is, you would think that, you know, groups like the Gurdjieff Foundation or whatever would be filled with men number 5 and enlightened beings because they've been doing these exercises, and they are not. So they're hoarding the exercises, they're hoarding this inner work, and it really deserves to be given to the world. It really deserves. People who are interested in the teachings who do not have access to a live group, and there are so many of them, shouldn't be cut off from this dimension. They should not be just told, well, it's useless for you unless you find a group. Nothing's going to happen, which is what they've been saying online for years. And it's not true. Group work is important. As a group, we become like a vessel. We can create, we can do certain kind of inner exercises collectively in a much easier way than we can individually. But the most important dimension, more than understanding the teachings, more than being present with a group of people, are practicing these inner exercises, learning the inner exercises and practicing them on a daily basis. The only way we grow our being is through inner exercises, through doing conscious breathing, through relaxing our body, through sensing our body, through working through our bones, through doing various things. It's the inner work that we do. Evolution is not a group phenomenon. We can only evolve as individuals. It's up to us, and it's the conscious work we ourselves do. So breathing in the word I, and then imagining settling somewhere in our body, and then breathing out the word and imagining, you know, like a gray, foggy, whatever, picking out the waste in our body. Breathing in I, and breathing out and imagining things are settling in our body. And okay, so any comments, any questions? I've talked a bit. We've done the inner exercises. Next week's going to be just as important as this one, but this is extremely important. Probably, like I said, this is one of the most important things we can learn, to consciously breathe and do this exercise. Any?
Yeah, can I share?
Oh, please, Iman, please.
I felt a kind of numbness in my right part of my face. And I felt like a tension in my throat.
Okay, for the tension in your throat, try and breathe that out. Try to breathe in into your throat and then breathe out any tension. And this is, as we're doing the body scan, going down with relaxation. When you find tense places in your body, just breathe in relaxation, breathe out tension, and consciously try to relax those parts of the body. As in terms of the numbness, when I have clients in the hypnotic state, the easiest way to re-enter that state is to remember how you feel and the sensations of being in that state. And I always give them descriptions. And I say, do not be limited and bound by my descriptions, because some of these are opposites. And I say, some people, when they're in the hypnotic state, experience a heaviness. They feel really, really heavy. And other people feel a lightness. And then some people feel a numbness. And other people feel a tingling. So to feel that numbness in your face, to me, is an indication of, a hypnotic phenomenon, and going into sort of, that part of the face to achieve that numbness would have, indicated a nice degree of relaxation. So that's a good sign, the tension in your throat. Just work on that. And I interrupted you, but if you can continue.
Also, there was a taste of bitterness. I'm fasting, but I felt this taste of bitterness, I think, as if I ate something bitter.
Okay. For those of you who are, not quite aware, it's Ramadan in the Islamic world. So from dawn until dusk, and I think it's approximately 5:30-ish p.m. in Damascus, they do not eat or drink. So no liquids, no nothing. And Iman, that could possibly explain it, the fact that you have been fasting since dawn. And I guess you're going to be breaking your fast in about an hour, hour and a half?
In about an hour, yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting observation. I'm not sure exactly what that means. It wouldn't surprise me if it's somehow connected to Ramadan. In my mouth, I can still smell the taste of coffee, but that's just because I drank coffee. Any other comments, Iman?
No, thanks.
No? Anyone else have any comments on that? Anything to say about this?
I want to say that I feel that I suddenly hold my breath, and it sounds like I am forgetting to breathe. Like my body is not breathing at all. Like some sort of dying in the process of breathing, or holding the breath. And when I exhale, I remember something. This is happening now, right?
Okay, can you explain that a bit?
Doing the breathing exercises again. Okay.
Yeah. So you're feeling some kind of problem, some kind of resistance within your body when you're doing this?
Not exactly a problem, or maybe a resistance, but in order to concentrate myself, I hold the breath. I just stop breathing.
Okay.
Consciously stopping breathing, and then you start breathing again. It gives me some kind of pleasure, because it's some sort of food that I'm that I'm taking from the air.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Gurdjieff says that, we're not supposed to really try to change our breathing in this exercise, though our breathing will change. Just allow the natural process to happen. But I have my intuition, a little, the little thing that happens when I'm talking to clients and people is there's something that he's saying that's very particular to him, and it's very important to Guido. And I have a feeling that this may be related to some kind of scarcity and some kind of an emotional feeling within yourself. Some kind of going back to childhood, having to hoard, having to hold on, having to, it's like you don't want to let go of it again. It could be, in relation to your parents, relation to your childhood, taught that resources are scarce. A lot of people with, breathing when they hold it in, it's like money as well. Like I'm given money and I hoard money. And, I don't want to spend this. And I walk around, and I did this for years myself, where, I wouldn't buy new shoes. I wanted to make sure, and the universe says, just release it. It comes back. So I'm just wondering, we'll talk about this when we connect individually, but I have a feeling that somehow it's related to a sense of abundance or a lack of abundance and a fear of loss in your world. So you breathe in and you want to hold it in there. And just, let your breathing be natural. The in-breath follows the out-breath, and the out-breath follows the in-breath. And, I'm not doing this exercise, but at some other point throughout the day, perhaps do the 4 to 8 breath. So you breathe in for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you breathe out for a count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you don't have any air, and you have to take an in-breath. But I do not do this with this exercise. But perhaps some other point during the day, practice the 4 and 8. So you breathe in, and you breathe out. So you have to take a breath. For this exercise, we want the breath to flow naturally. We do not want to bring attention to it. We just want to, as we breathe in, we want to imagine parts of the breath sort of settling in the body. And as we breathe out, we want to imagine, in the way I was taught before in a different program, breathing out a stale, foggy waste, as Mr. Gurdjieff, sort of something like breathing out from a cigarette. Does that make sense, Guido?
Absolutely. I used to do that kind of breathing while running. It gives me an impulse to physically run when I hold the breath and release it. But like I'm running and I hold the breath and I let it out. And my body easily runs by better.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you understand this.
To a degree. I have my own really terrible story. It's not terrible, and it is terrible. My youngest daughter, she's now 23, but up until about the age of 4, 4.5, she was a breath holder. The first time it happened, it was absolutely terrifying. I was living in rural Quebec, about an hour away from any kind of hospital, and she was in my arms and she couldn't breathe, and her lips turned blue. She was just a little baby. Her eyes rolled back in her head. Her face turned blue, and I thought she was dying in my arms. And apparently it's not common, but it happens. When certain children get really upset, emotionally or they get hurt, a sharp shock, they can't breathe. And when we finally took her to the doctor, not finally, but the doctor finally figured out she was a breath holder. And then what happens is they go unconscious and the body just naturally starts to breathe. And you just have to wait till it gets to that point. Once when I moved to England, a friend of mine came over and he said, "You must love her more than your other children." And we went, "What? Huh? No." And he said, "You're always watching her." And we said, "Well, it's because she's a breath holder. And if she has this at the top of a set of stairs and fell down the stairs, she could hurt herself. So we're always monitoring her to make sure that if she gets really upset, so she could get angry, that we can see and be ready to go and get her to stop her from hurting herself." And it once happened when I was living in York in England at the park behind Fulford St. Oswald's primary school, where she went, or actually her brother and sister were in school and she was a little too young then. She was on a swing and she got hurt. And this happened. And the other parents were freaking out. "We've got to call 999, which is the British equivalent of 911. It's saying my internet connection is unstable." And I'm going, no, don't call 999. It's okay. And they were looking at me like I was engaging in child abuse. But the breath, the body knows how to breathe. The body fully understands the breathing process. Trust the body. Just, the in-breath followed by the out-breath. Doing that, holding your breath and doing that when running is probably one of the reasons Mr. Gurdjieff didn't believe in people doing breathing exercises. He said that he made a lot of money because of all of these people who had learned from yogis. This was in the 1920s and whatever, incorrect breathing exercises. Now, as I understand it, he taught some breathing exercises, but only to his advanced students. For everyone else, he said, just breathe naturally. We can bring this conscious awareness to our breath, but just try to breathe naturally. And somehow you've gotten this part where you just don't let it go out properly. But we'll talk about that, when we meet up privately and try and figure out a way to counteract that. But just natural breaths, following the body's natural rhythm. Any other comments?
Is there any connection between like this and maybe like the book "Life is Only Real When I Am"?
Well, I mean, that's Mr. Gurdjieff. So of course there's a connection, but this exercise is not really in there. There are similar things in there that do talk about breathing. There's something called the compromise exercise that's in there. There's also something about the 3 fingers and other things. I will be going through those exercises in more detail. This one is not in there in the way it has been put in the Gurdjieff Early Talks 1930 or 1914 to 31. And I've given you in the message board of the group just the exercise itself, and it's the best rendition I have found. I've spent days looking through all sorts of stuff trying to figure out the best explanation and the best sort of description and instructions for this exercise. And I believe it's that exercise 1939, page 414 in that book. But there are exercises in Life is Real. Life is only real then when I am. However, you have to understand that, Mr. Gurdjieff said that he was writing 3 books, 3 series. The first series is Beelzebub's Tales. The second is Meetings with Remarkable Men. And the third is Life is Real Only Then When I Am. And I Am is the great I Am. That book is a very advanced book. And
our exercises I am, or like, well, I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean the title, the I am, is the I am, I am. But what I'm really trying to get at, you read that book first. I did. And it is really for advanced practitioners in the work. There's stuff in there you cannot possibly understand without having delved into tales and meetings with remarkable men and hit those books over your head over and over again. So, and the interesting thing was that Mr. Gurdjieff was writing that, and he abandoned writing that around 1934, 35, and he told his family and a few people to just, get together with some of the lecture notes that he gave and to use that. Now, I believe that there's something more that was going on, and this is just my belief, but Mr. Gurdjieff never, ever allowed people to take notes in his presence. Uspensky and the rest of them, Uspensky had an incredible mind, and he could remember dialogue. The ladies of the rope or the women of the rope, they would all, as soon as they left him, they would immediately go to a cafe and then spend the next few hours arguing about exactly what he said. And so the women of the rope, those transcripts were what they wrote afterwards. Mr. Gurdjieff wanted people to remember them. However, starting in, I believe it was 1938, but primarily during the Nazi occupation of Paris, he actually allowed someone to come in and transcribe, take notes, exact notes of the group meetings. And so he violated what he told everyone. And I believe he did this because he realized the impossibility of his task and that he wasn't going to be able to fully pass it along without these notes. So the most recent one, G.I. Gurdjieff, Paris meetings, 1943, that's apparently the year that the most meetings took place. And this is the most complete collection of those meetings, except they've redacted part of it. They've taken out many of the inner exercises that he taught during those meetings. And there are some meetings where there are some versions with them in, some versions with them out, but there's a wealth of information within all of them. So the Paris, meetings, the transcripts of meetings, and the one that was just recently published, 1943. I believe that these are contained with them are very advanced understandings of the teachings. So life is only real then when I am. So we're not real. We're consist of this multiplicity of eyes, and one eye is in control, and then another eye knocks it out and comes in, and then a third one, and we lack consistency, the ability to do unity, will, all of those things he talked about in search of the miraculous. But when I become real, life is only real then when I am. So contained within the title of that book is a very profound teaching. So to create, to grow our inner bodies, to grow the Kesdjan body, the astral body, and then to grow our higher being body, by doing those, we become real. We become I am. And then life becomes real. You walk into a room. You see all these chairs, you see a couch, you see tables, you see pictures. There are no chairs, couches, tables, or pictures in that room. A squirrel comes into the same room and they do not see chairs, tables, couches, pictures. They see objects. We as human beings project so much meaning onto the world around us. We're doing this all the time. These are parts of our habitual thought patterns. If every time we saw an object that looked like a chair and we thought, that looks like a chair, I wonder if I can sit in it, we would, spend so much energy. But, I was once walking, I lived in the country, in the Gatineau Hills outside of Ottawa in Quebec. And I was once walking through the woods and I saw this rock formation that looked like a throne with arms, and I sat on it, and it was like this straight back, and it was like this, it looked like a throne, like a chair, but I knew it was a rock that was millions of years old, and maybe not millions of years because it was under a mile of ice 13,500 years ago, but it was 13,500 years. But I projected the meaning on it. But when I become more and more real, and he talked about the highest level of reality as being objective consciousness, to see things as they objectively are without our projections onto them. So when I become real, the world around me becomes real. So that's what that title means. You know, as I become real, as I enter that objective state of consciousness and begin to objectively see the world, I realize what I impose on the world as opposed to what is really there in the world. For instance,
sorry to interrupt. I have to leave.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, it is 12. I'm just going to finish this, just one thought. But that's fine. It's nice seeing you, Francis. Take care.
Goodbye.
You know, just one final sort of understanding. You know, as I brought up that, let me just do it again. What you're seeing on the screen, you know, the words in, breathing out, imagine something's flow. Those words do not exist on the screen. There are just lines and squiggles on the screen. If it was in Chinese, you would figure out that it had some kind of importance, that it made some kind of sense. But a squirrel would just see lines, it wouldn't see the words. We are actually projecting on to those shapes the meanings of the words. Those words are coming from inside my brain. I'm projecting. Every time I read something, there's a part of me in my brain that takes shape over the words and projecting onto the words. And we do this all the time. As humans, we project a level of reality onto the world that doesn't exist there. So when we're truly in the I am state, when the witness, when the observer, when the real I is fully awakened, we begin to see the world as it is real. So life is only real then when I am. Otherwise, it's just a lot of these internal projections. Any other final comments before we go, before we conclude?
I just want to say that I will be, and I want to message you about this in a little while, Alan, but I'm going to be missing the next few meetings. I'm traveling starting early next Sunday until the 26th.
Okay.
So just so everybody knows what's going on there.
Okay.
I'll do my best to check in on the recordings, but I don't think I'll have reliable internet access.
Okay. Sure. Thank you for letting me know. Any other comments, any other things before we go?
Is there any connection between that and like maybe like in the Bible where it says like I am that I am?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's, you know, Moses said, tell me your name, and God, I am that I am. Absolutely. The great I am. But we could speculate on that. The thing to do is to grow that part. That's the witness, that's the observer, that's the watcher, the I am. Okay. Thank you all for joining me today. Hopefully you'll have a wonderful week, and, you know, practice relaxing the body from the head down, developing that degree of sensation, getting into a nice collected state, and then breathing, you know, I am. And as we breathe in, imagine things settling somewhere in us. And then as we breathe out, imagine breathing out the waste. And then I am. Now we can do this elsewhere. We can do it when we're walking in different times, but only when we get extremely proficient at it. And I will build on this next week with the importance of what is called the collected state, to collect ourselves. It's also very important. Between this week and next week are going to be some of the most important meetings that we will have, and that so many other exercises will be predicated on this. These are how we actually coat our inner being, how we begin to draw those substances within us. Okay, thank you everyone for joining me.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll be talking next week, and I'll be trying to talk to some of you individually this week. I didn't talk to anyone last week because I got 4 books and I was working through them and scanning some of them, and so, you know, that took up all my time. It's like I felt like a kid in a candy shop. Okay, take care.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.